Hello everyone, I am Jonathan Little, and today I wanted to share with you a quiz from my site, pokercoaching.com. Here we have a lot of quizzes available from myself and a few other great poker players. This is number 306, so we have at least 306 of them. And I just wanted to share it with you. I know that all of my students over at Poker Coaching have gone through a lot of these, and I know a lot of you have not signed up for your free trial at pokercoaching.com yet. I don't know why, but you might as well go sign up. And here's a little preview of what you will get. So you come to the quiz page, you navigate to whatever number you want to go to, then you just press play. Here we get Queen 8 offsuit in the small blind. That's not exactly what you want, but sometimes it's what you get. Folds around to the cutoff, who is a kid. Now, I don't know anything about this kid. If he was a good kid, I probably would have said he's a good kid, so he's probably an unknown kid to me. I guess it is worth mentioning that as time moves forward, people who are younger are not necessarily going to be good at poker unless you're playing in a high buy-in tournament. And that's because in the past, a lot of the people who were younger were playing a lot of online poker, especially in America, mainly referring to. And they had a lot of free time because they didn't have anything going on in life, so they got really good at poker. And they grinded up money, they started playing big tournaments like what I did, right? So now, it's actually not the kids who are thought to be the best players. It's often the players who are something like 26 to 35. People in that range had access to online poker in America, again. And those are the players who have put in a ton of time. Whereas now, a lot of the younger kids don't have access to online poker. Or if they do, it's not like it was in the past where you could just play a ton. And for that reason, you'll see a lot of the younger players today who are 20 years old or 22 years old, whatever, they often are not nearly as good as a 22-year-old player would have been 8 years ago. That said, usually the younger people, if they're in even $500 to $1,000 buy-in tournaments, are at least competent because most kids don't have $1,000 to their name. So anyway, this is a spot where, well, I guess here are options. Not going to tell you what to do yet. Should we fold, call, raise to 900, or raise to 1,500. So at this point, after that long spiel about various tournament players, you have to pick. What do you want to do? Do you want to fold the Queen 8? Do you want to call? Do you want to re-raise to 900, or raise to 900, or raise to 1,500? I already know this is going to be a very clear call. I don't think any of the other options have merit at all. So let's click call. I think this is usually just a spot to call. We have to put in 150 into a pot that's going to be 1,100. And clearly that's great odds. We do have a pretty bad position, but I think it's fine just to call. The alternative line is to raise to about 1,500. You definitely don't want to raise to 900 because then you're going to get called by the limper every time and maybe even the big blind. And you really don't want to just make the pot big out of position for no reason with Queen 8 offsuit without much fold equity pre-flop. You could raise bigger to like 1,500. Maybe then you get a little bit of fold equity. But I think you're probably going to be best off just calling and seeing the flop. So I do call, big blind checks. Flop comes Queen, Jack, 3, giving us top pair. Should we check, bet 700, bet 1,000, or bet 1,800? So because this is a limped pot, we are going to at least consider leading. I already know that ahead of time. Given the pot size, given that the board is somewhat coordinated, you either want to bet rather large, about 1,000, or we're going to want to check. I think betting 1,000 is probably the right answer, but let's click a different answer and see what happens. Notice we got 10 points for the right answer earlier. I think check is probably like an okay play, probably like 9 points, 8 points. I definitely think leading in this spot is viable. When you're seeing a limped pot, as opposed to the previous quiz of mine where it was a raised pot, in this scenario, there's no real reason to think that anyone has connected so well with this flop because often people are limping with their marginal stuff and raising their best hands, which means if they didn't raise, the kid I'm referring to, if the kid did not raise, he probably doesn't have ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack, king-queen, king-jack, queen-jack, right? Because a lot of people raise those hands. Therefore, the kid's range is going to be way weaker on this board than if he was a pre-flop raiser. So that means this board is a little bit better for me than it normally would be. We do have top pair. This is a hand I would certainly like to bet for value. Whatever my opponents have very likely has some equity. So I don't really mind making those hands with some equity fold. So this is a spot where I like leading, and if I am going to lead, I'm going to bet about 700. We could certainly go a little bit bigger. Like if you said 1,000, I don't think there's anything wrong with 1,000. I don't really like betting 1,800 though, because then when you bet big like that, you're probably only going to get called when you're in pretty bad shape. So I would typically lead in this spot, but checking's also fine. I do go 700 this time. And now the kid raises to 2,500. Yuck. Should we fold, call, re-raise to 7,000, or go all in? What a dicey one. Well, at this point, I think we're either going to fold or call. Given we're against a kid, I think kids typically are a little bit too aggressive. That's going to usually lead me to stick around. We don't want to re-raise to 7,000 because we certainly don't want to play for all of our money. So it's either call or fold. If this was a very tight, weak, straightforward player, folding would be fine. But I think against a kid, we're going to want to call. And I don't see any way we're not getting 10 points for this answer. To show you, though, what a wrong answer looks like, let's click on go all in, because that's definitely not the right one. 1 point. I definitely do not like going all in. Going all in risks a ton of chips. And while you may be able to make a hand like Queen 10 or King Queen fold, you're still going to get called by the 2 pair and the sets. And also Ace Queen, if that decided to limp, may decide to call you anyway. That said, if you tell me your opponent's range only contains like pocket 3s as a nut hand and no other actual nut hands, so like maybe the best thing he has is Queen 9 or something like that, because remember, he did limp. If you tell me that to be the case, then maybe making a big shove is not so bad if it makes him fold literally almost every hand in his range. So anyway, I'm not a big fan of that. What about raising to 7,000? Well, if we raise to 7,000 and he calls, we are likely in bad shape or against a draw. And the problem is we don't really know if we should continue betting on various turns. Like say the turns of 4. Well, we crush the draws and we'd like to bet against them, but we also are crushed by 2 pairs and sets and whatnot. So we don't want to bet against those. So we'd be in a pretty nasty spot there. This is a situation where I think we should probably call. Mainly because if you think about my leading range, it should be a lot of top pairs, medium pairs, and draws, right? The good draws we can call with, the top pairs we can call. Not doing very well in English today. We can call with the draws, we can call with the top pairs, and I think the middle pairs we can probably start folding. The problem is if we only call when we have like really premium hands here, we probably just don't have enough premium hands in my leading range, especially given I'm leading a hand as weak as Queen 8. So I think I have to defend in this spot, but I'm not loving it at all. And I'm definitely going to check every turn to the opponent, pretty much no matter what. So turn is a queen, and I'm definitely going to check, and he checks behind. So that's definitely a good sign. I suppose it is worth mentioning why I'm not going to lead on this turn. That's because when the opponent raises the flop, he either has a draw, which I want to allow to continue bluffing, or he has a queen, which, I'm only in marginal shape against, or he has just total air, which I also wanted to keep bluffing with. So that's definitely not a spot where I want to lead, because leading is going to let him stop bluffing. So now on the river, we end up with trips with a marginal kicker. Should we check, bet 2,000, bet 4,500, or bet 7,000? I think I know the right answer. It's either 2,000 or 7,000. You're going to find in spots like this where you're very polarized, where you have either the nuts or nothing. You typically don't want to bet half pot, 2/3 pot or so. It's either very big or very small. In this spot, I think it's going to be very small. Maybe I'll tell you why. Let's see. This is a spot where I definitely think we should either bet small to try to get called by stuff like a jack or even random ace 3 that decided to raise the flop, or we should bet huge to try to induce our opponent to hero call with that same range, because a lot of the draws missed. In general, when I know I have some trips in my range, and it's pretty unlikely my opponent has trips because you would think they just keep betting those on the turn, and all the draws miss, that's usually a spot where I'm going to polarize my range and bet big. So I definitely like a 7,000 bet in the spot. I think a 4,500 bet is fine, but I think a 4,500 bet may look a little bit too value heavy to some players, and that's going to induce them to fold stuff like ace 3. Whereas I think a 2,000 bet, they may just decide, well, I'm getting great pot odds, I have to call with ace 3 or pocket 7s or ace jack. And a 7,000 bet may make them incredibly suspicious. I mean, imagine we could get called by all the bluff catchers if we bet 2,000 or 7,000. Clearly, we'd just rather bet 7,000 and get more money in the pot. So I think I'm going to bet 7,000 most of the time here, but I could also definitely see a case for betting small if your opponent's not going to be inclined to hero call you very often. I mean, there's certainly many, many players, especially in small stakes games, who will just never ever call a big bet here unless they have, I don't know, ace jack or better. And against those players, you definitely want to bet small. Then there are other players, usually in the high stakes games or just calling stations, who will call 7,000 no problem. So figure out who you're against and then bet accordingly. But usually the medium bet of about 4,500 is usually going to be the worst bet size because it either doesn't extract maximum value or it's going to make the opponent fold a lot of their garbage. There may be some merit in checking if you think the opponent just has total air, but I don't know why we would necessarily assume that. So I like betting, and I'm usually going to bet big here. I do bet big. Opponent calls, so we are pretty happy. And this time we lose. It's pretty shocking at Queen 10. This is definitely a hand you would think he would want to bet the turn, but he didn't. If he did bet the turn, I would have check called, and then I would have check called again on the river, so that's all worth mentioning. I would have lost a turn bet and a river bet. Instead, we only lost one big river bet. If he raises us on the river, that would have been a horrible spot, but I think I have to call, given I don't really block any draws, and all the draws missed. So we were in bad shape on this hand, but somehow, we only lost 10,000 chips, which is 33 big blinds. When you make trips and you lose, you're usually happy if you only lose 33 big blinds. So it's a good result, despite the fact that we lost. So that's it. That's this quiz. As you can see, you can go over here and type quizzes or click the quizzes option on the dashboard, and we have loads and loads of quizzes. As you see, I have not done my quizzes because I've been busy making the quizzes. But once you do your quizzes, it gives you a score and lets you know how you're doing, and also lets you know where you can improve. Like, say, for example, you see you do quite poorly on the turn, let's say. You can then start working really hard on your turn play. And to help with that, we actually have homework. Every month I give out homework. Here's this month's homework question. Tight aggressive player raises to 2.5 big blinds. Another tight aggressive player 3 bets from second position. Everyone folds to you on the button. What is your strategy? With your whole range, not just with aces or kings, with your whole range. Let's say you 4-bet to 14 big blinds. Only the 3-better calls. Flop comes 7-5-3. Your opponent checks. What is your strategy? With your whole range. Which hands are you betting? Which hands are you checking? What sizing are you using, etc. Next, you bet 8 big blinds. Your opponent calls. Comes 4 of diamonds on the turn. Your opponent checks. What's your strategy? We're checking behind. Say the river is a 2. Your opponent goes all in. What is our strategy? And you have to give me a range. We have a range analyzer. I actually explained this in the homework form, where you have to tell me how you're playing each part of your range on each street. And doing that will go an incredibly long way to making you a world-class poker player. So that's pokercoaching.com. You can get a completely free trial there. Just go there and sign up. Hope you enjoy it. I've worked really hard on the site and hope you have fun. My goal is to make you as good at poker as you can possibly be, and I've tried to make it really easy with the homework and the quizzes. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll talk to you later.